If you've ever cried in your car after a friend's wedding, if you've smiled through an engagement announcement and then gone home and just curled up in your bed sad, if you've laid in your bed just doing the math on your life, wondering how did you get here? Still single, still waiting, still watching everyone else's story move forward while yours seems to be on pause, that's grief. Not because your life is over, not because singleness is a tragedy, but because grief isn't only for death. It's for any loss, including the loss of a timeline you thought you'd have, a future you pictured, a version of your life that hasn't come yet. Today, I'm walking through the 7 stages of grief. Yes, I said 7. I'll explain in a minute, but I'm showing you exactly what the stages look like when the loss is singleness. If you felt crazy or dramatic or unspiritual for grieving a life you have never even had, I want you to stay with me through this one, okay? You're not crazy, you're just grieving, and grief deserves to be understood, not shamed, okay? Now, most people know the 5 stages of grief, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It's the Kubler-Ross, I think that's how you pronounce it, method, introduced the model decades ago, and it's a part of how we talk about loss. But grief researchers later expanded it to 7 stages because real grief doesn't happen in just 5 clean stages. It's messier than that, right? So here's the full list: shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression, reflection, and loneliness, the upward turn, reconstruction, and acceptance with hope. Here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. You will not move through these stages in a straight line. You might skip one entirely. You might spend a year in stage 4 and think you're finally past it, and then land right back in stage 1 the day your friend gets engaged. It's not regression, okay? You're not doing grief wrong, I promise. Grief is a little more fluid. It's not just a staircase you step out of. So let's walk through what each stage looks like when we're talking about singleness, okay? The first stage, shock and denial. This is the surely not me stage. Somewhere along the way, you build a quiet, unspoken timeline in your head. Married by 25 or 28, or definitely before 30. And when that timeline is passed, something in you refuses to fully register it, right? So you push it down, you stay busy, you throw yourself into work, into ministry, or into whatever you can do to keep your hands and your mind full enough that you don't have to sit with the ache and pain of still being single. You tell people that, and maybe even yourself, that you're just not in a rush, right? That you're content. And some of that may genuinely be true, but underneath it, there's a quiet refusal to look at that loss in the eye. Denial isn't weakness, and it isn't a sin. God built you with the capacity to absorb pain slowly instead of all at once, and that shows up in this stage. But denial can't be where you build your life. If you've been telling yourself it doesn't bother me for years while quietly avoiding baby showers, wedding invitations, that's worth being honest about, okay? You know, David says it like it is in Psalm 13. He says he asks God how long he's going to forget him, how long he's going to carry this ache by himself. He's not acting like everything's going to be okay, not doing the whole fake it till you make it thing. And I love that because it means that you don't have to pretend either. Asking how long isn't you losing faith. It's just being honest. Ask yourself this week, where have I been avoiding the truth of how singleness actually feels? Okay, stage 2, pain and guilt. Once the numbness starts to wear off, unfortunately, the real ache begins, right? And close behind it comes guilt. Did I do something wrong? Am I too much? Too independent? Too picky? Not pretty enough? Not spiritual enough? If I handled that one relationship differently, would I be married right now? This is where a lot of Christian women tend to get stuck because guilt sounds like maybe I don't have enough faith for this. Maybe God is withholding a husband because of something in my past or something I haven't learned yet. Maybe I'm being disciplined, right? Like punished. Friend, hear me. Singleness is not a punishment, and it is not proof that you failed some invisible test. Going back over every little decision, trying to find the one thing that caused this is not you being wise or careful. That's just beating yourself up for something you can't change. And there's a difference between godly reflection, which brings clarity and peace, and guilt-driven rumination, which just keeps you in a pain loop. If you find yourself circling the same regrets over and over again with no resolution, that's grief that needs to be healed. When you're in this stage, take your pain directly to God. Stage 3, anger and bargaining, okay? This is the stage that no one wants to quite admit out loud, especially in churches where anger at God can feel forbidden or like a sin. But I want to say this clearly, okay? Anger is allowed here. Anger at the timeline you're living, anger at the relationship that should have worked but didn't, anger at every well-meaning person who tells you you'll meet him when you stop looking, as if your longing were an obstacle. Anger even at God for a door that hasn't opened yet. And right alongside that anger, bargaining tends to show up. God, if you bring him this year, I will serve you more. I'll stop doubting you. I'll trust you completely, I promise. Bargaining feels productive in a moment. It feels like you're doing something with the pain instead of just sitting in it. But underneath, it's really fear. It's an attempt to control an outcome that was never yours to control. You know, Job argued with God across the chapters. The Psalms are full of raw, unfiltered complaint from David and others demanding to know, how long? Where are you, Lord? Scripture never asks you to squash your anger before bringing it to God. Anger brought honestly to him is an act of faith because it assumes that he's big enough and safe enough to handle the full weight of what you are feeling. And if you've been slightly angry at God about this, you don't have to hide that from him, okay? He already knows it, first of all, and he would rather you bring it to him than bury it. Okay, stage 4 is depression, reflection, and loneliness. This is often the heaviest stage and usually the longest. The noise of denial and anger starts to quiet down, and what's left underneath is the full weight of loss. Sunday dinners where you're the only one without a +1. Weddings that remind you again, because you're at the singles table, of what you don't have. The quiet apartment at the end of the day when the group chat has gone silent. The slow realization that this isn't a season you're passing through quickly. It's just your life right now, and that is so heavy to bear. I want to be clear. Each of these stages are okay to go through. This is you letting the loss be as big as it actually is, instead of minimizing it to make other people comfortable. Even King Solomon went through a depression phase in Ecclesiastes where he thought everything was hopeless and meaningless, right? He sits with it in that chapter after chapter before he ever gets to hope. So you're allowed to be here. You don't have to skip to the ending just to make everyone else feel more comfortable with your sadness. The real danger in this stage isn't the sadness itself, but it's the isolating inside of it. Loneliness convinces you that no one would understand, so you stop letting anyone try. If you're in this stage right now, this is the moment to let someone in, a friend, a mentor, a counselor, and it's not a moment to disappear. Okay? Stage 5, we are on the upward turn. Slowly, without you even trying to make things happen, you start to feel lighter. Someone asks you out and you actually let yourself get a little excited about it instead of bracing for it to fall apart. You realize it's been a while since the wedding invite wrecked your whole day. You just feel less lonely than you did a couple months ago, right? And it can almost feel too good to be true. Like, you don't want to get your hopes up because what if it swings back the other way? That is a completely normal reaction, okay? But this is just a place where grace is doing its quiet work inside of you. You don't have to explain it or prove it's going to last. Let yourself actually feel good when things feel good, okay? Stage 6, I love this one, is the reconstruction phase, okay? This is where you start actively rebuilding, not around the relationship you didn't get, but around the life you actually have in front of you right now. This is the stage for honest self-examination and work on yourself, the kind that leads somewhere instead of just looping in doom loops, right? In circles. Maybe you've been dating from fear instead of discernment, saying yes to just anyone available because of the fear of staying single outweighs the judgment of the compatibility in the relationship. Maybe you've let singleness become a waiting room instead of a life, putting off ministry and friendships, travel, even joy until he arrives to just unlock it all. Reconstruction asks a different question. Not when will this change, but what do I actually want my life to look like right now, married or not? It's active, not passive. This is the stage where you build real community instead of white knuckling through alone, where you deepen your walk with God on your own terms, not as a consolation prize, but as an actual center of your life, where you invest in your work, your rest, your friendships, not as placeholders for a future that hasn't arrived yet, but as a full life you're already living today. This stage often produces more lasting fruit than the relationship you were originally grieving you would have had. Okay, the 7th and final stage is acceptance and hope. Acceptance doesn't mean that you stopped wanting marriage, okay? It doesn't mean that that desire within you disappears or that you've somehow transcended the longing, okay? It means you stop being at war with your current season. This is the stage where Philippians 4:11 and 12 stops becoming a verse that you just tolerate and starts being something you actually live. Paul writes in that verse that he learned to be content in any and every circumstance. Not that circumstances stopped mattering to him, but that his peace stopped depending on them changing. Contentment isn't the absence of that desire within you. It's no longer letting that desire run your entire nervous system. Hope here isn't naive. It's not, he's coming any day now. I can feel it. It's something steadier than that. It's a settled trust that God is not withholding good from you by leaving you single in this season. That this chapter has purpose and meaning, even if you've never fully understood why it took this long. You can want marriage and still be a whole person today. Both things can be true at once. So, if you saw yourself in any of these stages or more than one, that doesn't mean that something's wrong, okay? That is just what it looks like when you're actually being honest about this instead of just putting on a brave face, okay? You're allowed to grieve the timeline you didn't get. You're allowed to feel all 7 stages, sometimes in the same week, sometimes in the same afternoon, and you're allowed to still believe that God is good while you're standing in the middle of the hardest parts of this, okay? Which stage are you in right now? I would love to hear in the comments. I read every single one, and I promise that you are not alone or the only one who needed to hear this today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this one next. And remember, you are worthy, loved, and chosen. Have a blessed week.